Glad to see so many people here. Hope everybody enjoyed your spring break and come back feeling refreshed and excited and ready to go for the home stretch of school. It's a great time of year. So we'll go ahead and call this meeting of Marble Falls ISD Board of Trustees to order at 6:01 p.m. on Monday, March 21st, 2022. Roll call, myself, Coach Berkman, Mrs. McCrary, and Mr. Payson are present. I believe Mr. Verdell's on Zoom, and Mr. Nauman and Mr. Edwards will not be joining us this evening. Now I ask Reverend Ellen Eli to lead us in the invocation, followed by the pledges to the flags by Dr. Allen and the vision statement by Mrs. McCrary.
Thank you. Let us pray. Gracious and mighty God, we thank you for the opportunity we have to be here this evening to celebrate our schools. But we also know that not far away there was a tornado that touched down this afternoon. So Lord, we pray for all who are in harm's way in this stormy evening. And we also give thanks for the rain that's fallen. We pray, oh God, that some of that rain went to Eastland, Texas, and some of the other areas that needed the rain. But in the meantime, oh God, be with us during our deliberations this evening. Give us your wisdom, your insight, your spirit, and help us do all things to bring honor to you as we serve our community and our schools. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Join me in the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
You'll join me in our vision statement. Marble Falls ISD has an unyielding commitment to love every child and inspire them to achieve their fullest potential.
All right, so we will go to item 6A, Superintendent's Award, Marble Falls High School. Mr. Adams.
It's quicker than I expected it to be. Well, this is a time of year that I really enjoy because it gives us an opportunity to recognize our kids. And just a little bit about how we do it at the high school. We have nearly 1,200 kids to choose from, and there are a lot who would be deserving of such an award. But what we do is we work with our leadership team, and they reach out to teachers, and then they come up with their recommendations for student of the Superintendent's Awards. And we have two tonight that we want to recognize. And the first one is Abigail Mcclinton. There are a lot of things that I could say about Abigail that would all be good, but I'm just going to read what some of her teachers said. Ms. Sutton said, I have been so impressed with Abby and her overall attitude this year. Never have I had a student who is so aware of exactly what she needs in order to succeed. It makes it incredibly easy and rewarding to be her teacher. When I think of Abby, I think of her can-do attitude and sunshiny personality. I think she created a word. She brightens up my 8th period every day, and I love her passion for each of the books that we have read this year. I have every confidence in Abby and her future. I know she will go on to brighten many others' lives as well. Ms. Gomez says, I have worked with Abby since freshman year. I've seen her go through the tragic death of her mother and the absent father. She's shown resilience, positive attitude, and determination. I have seen that she believes in education and in herself. Her mother would be proud. Coach Silva says, Abigail, I am blessed and beyond thankful to have you as a part of my life for the last 4 years. Despite all that you've been through, I've watched and continue to watch your kind heart and positivity impact the lives around you in ways you couldn't imagine, including my own. No matter where you end up after high school, continue being yourself, and you will inspire those around you. And as a result, you will undoubtedly make this world a better place. So we're really, really proud of you, Abigail, and I'm really proud of you that you made it through this entire time without crying. Okay. When I brought her into my office to tell her, she was there with two of her teachers. All three of them started crying, which almost made me cry. I managed to hold it together. Then I called her sister, and they all started again, and it was just disastrous. But we're really, really proud of you. If you'll stand right here, we're going to bring up Mr. Hudson McBride. Yeah, you just stay right there and feel uncomfortable for a minute. If you've gone to any sporting events, you've probably seen Hudson, and you've probably heard his dad. We're grateful for them. They're a great family. And Coach Crane said, Hudson is a fantastic leader, a hard worker, and someone who only accepts his best. He is thorough in his approach to class and continues to seek improvement daily. He has incredible character, and he has the respect of everyone. I've been fortunate to teach him this year in AP Literature. Miss Silva says, Hudson is one of the most hardworking students I've ever taught and always rises to the occasion regardless of the challenges, whether those are challenges in sports or academics. He is always incredibly respectful, kind, and in good spirits. He's a team leader and lifts those around him up every day on the field and in the classroom. Congratulations, Hudson. Now I get to go up here. We want to get a picture of you so we can prove we knew you when you are famous.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
I'm not near as quick. All right, here we go. Smile. Thank you.
All right, so we'll go to item 6B, Going the Extra Mile Award, Danielle Henson.
Good evening. Tonight we are going to be honoring our social emotional learning counselor from the high school with our Going the Extra Mile Award. Christina DeLoach, will you join Miss DeLoach, she joined Marble Falls ISD in 2013 as the counselor for Colt Elementary, and she served in that position for 6 years. And in 2019, she moved to the high school to join Damon and that team as the SEL counselor. Here is your award. Congratulations. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you very much.
Damon has some words to
Oh,
say
Lord.
as well.
This couldn't have worked out better than it did. She's worked with Abby a lot this year, and so I was like, Christina, are you going to be able to go to the board meeting? Because I don't know how many folks are going to be able to be there to support Abby. So I lied to her because I already knew we had a ton of people coming. And she asked me today. She says, "Do I need to dress up?" I said, "No, that'll be fine." Yo, I have been blessed, and anyone that knows Christina knows this to be true. When she came on board at the high school as our SEL counselor, we had kind of a job description, but none of us really knew exactly what this was going to look like. And what Christina did is she turned our system and our approach to SEL in a way that I think could be a model for any high school across the entire state of Texas. When you talk about going the extra mile, I couldn't think of anyone that I think that deserves it more. And we have some hardworking people at the high school. But Christina meets with every kid that's getting ready to go to alternative school because we want them to know that we love them. They may be going, but we still love them. We're going to love them there. We're going to love them back. She comes to me continuously with ideas about how we can engage other kids that are not engaged, the kids that are not attached in other ways. She's got a ping pong club of all things I'm not sure if that's for her or the kids, but she does that. She goes above and beyond in every way. She's been a resource not only for our kids, she's been a resource for our adults, and she even listens to me whine every now and then and helps me get through the difficult things that I have to deal with. And so I'm thrilled beyond measure to be able to recognize her tonight and to have surprised her, because that was part of my goal. Proud of you.
Oh, your camera's so much better than mine. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let me get one more. 1, 2, 3.
I do want to take just a moment to recognize our staff that showed up today. If you're from Marble Falls High School and you came to support our kids, I know some of them already slipped out because they didn't want to stay for the fun stuff. Will y'all please stand and you can. Thank y'all. And I know that Abby's already slipped out, but if you're here to support Hudson, would you please stand and be recognized as well? Thank y'all.
Okay, so we are going to skip item 6C for tonight. That brings us to item 7, citizen comments. I have one from Mrs. Wanda Maynard. And Mrs. Maynard, while you're coming up to the podium, I'll just remind you we have a 3-minute time limit. I'll kind of give you a little thumbs up or something when we get to about 30 seconds. Is that okay with you?
That's fine, sir.
All righty.
Okay. I'm here before the board because we had issues with the human sexuality that my child's going to be starting being taught. And this sounds like a college course for an adult to be taught, to go in their toolbox of knowledge. And it's not something I believe that needs to be taught to my child because he is still just that, a child. He's worried about video games and Legos. He's not worried about human sexuality, the point that's real explicit, talking about like ejaculation or erection on this. And I don't want my child exposed to this. I've contacted the governor's office. I've contacted his wife to ask for help, and I've showed him the links to get to our curriculum that's required by the state. And I don't believe this should even be introduced yet. It's our parent rights that's getting pushed aside, and we don't want our children to be exposed to that. I mean, my son is going to be taught everything he needs to know to be a productive adult, but on this, the paperwork I printed out today, it says, this is the teacher's notes. I got that off of the internet. Puberty is when your body begins to develop and transform into an adult body. It's considered 8 to 12-year-old as an adult body. That's my baby. That's my child. It's not a adult body. And for the little girls, it's 9 to 14. And I don't understand this. It says when your body gets ready to transform into an adult body, your brain releases a special hormone and puberty glands that goes to your brain and activates the hormones. These little girls don't need to be discussed this stuff either. They're little girls playing with Barbie dolls, playing with puzzles, coloring. And it says they're going to be introduced to vaginal discharge and 3rd and 4th grade, ejaculation for little boys, 3rd and 4th grade, and this is one of the deals out of the teacher's notes. It says ejaculation is a male's penis stiffens as a result of an increasing blood supply, and it can be a result of a physical or mental stimulation. A child does not need mental or physical stimulation. This does not need to be in our campus. And I know I am told it is regulated by the state, but I'm approaching the state about that as well, and I'm still getting a hold of Ken Paxton's office, and I do not want my child to be taught. And then the little girls are taught how the trimesters are in their pregnancies They're little girls, they're little children still, and that does not need to be introduced to any Texas campus. If a parent chooses to tell their child at a young age, which I do not believe in that and I will not back it, it's wrong. In any other setting where an adult would talk to a child about this, that is something where a dad would jump in their face, knock them down, or a mom would get the cops and get them put in jail. But this is something that's upsetting me, and I don't want my child exposed to this. And you say we can opt in on the curriculum, but what about when my child comes back into his class and his kids are talking about erections, ejaculations, and he's exposed to that either way, whether he's opt in or opt out. And I don't want it in the campus. That's my child, my baby, and he'll learn about that when he's in his teenage years, not when he's in elementary. But I appreciate y'all's time. It's just something that the parents need to start standing up and looking at this, because this is our rights that's getting taken away as a mother. I don't want my child to grow up any quicker than he already is. I mean, it's breaking my heart. My baby is almost as tall as me. But I want him to be a child. Let him play with Legos. Don't expose him to all this sexuality. He's a child. And I know y'all are kind of at a standstill, but
A little bit more than 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good if you
I
just
just
wanted
get
to.
passionate about my child, and I don't want him exposed to that.
I understand. And we do have a update presentation on that later this evening from Mrs. Lefflet. We're not going to be adopting anything this evening. It is just an update. I would
Okay.
just highlight a couple things. The state does require that we offer the curriculum.
Yes, sir.
And it is an opt-in curriculum.
Yeah.
Again, the state does require it. And the materials are being reviewed by the Student Health Advisory Committee, which is kind of a cross-section of educators and people from the community. And so
Yeah.
I would say, I definitely believe that that committee probably has the community's best interest at heart.
Yeah,
but
they
it's,
do. I've attended a meeting or two, and then I'll be up at their next meeting this coming Wednesday. But, well, I appreciate y'all's time. And sorry I went over. It's just I wanted to make sure the parents know you've got to be your children's advocate, because they don't have a voice if we don't give it to them.
I understand. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to rearrange the agenda just a little bit this evening, and we're going to move into executive session for discussion of professional personnel, Texas Government Code 551.074, including the renewal and extension of campus-based and central office administrator contracts and Colt Elementary principal. Also discussion of real property, Government Code 551.072, discussion of safety and security 551.076, and discussion of personally identifiable student information 551.0821. We will adjourn into executive session at 6:18.
Jacksboro got ripped out. So, like, I'm glad our kids are not Leander.
Okay, we will reconvene into open session at 6:53 p.m. Thank you all for your patience and hanging out with us. Dr. Allen, any administrative recommendation for action to come out of executive session?
The administration recommends that you approve Personnel List 1 and 3 as presented in closed session.
Administrative recommendation, any questions, comments, motions from the board?
So move.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Administration would also recommend that we name Melissa Fletcher principal at Colt Elementary School. They haven't voted yet.
Give us just a second to make that official. All right, administrative recommendation, questions, comments, motions from the board?
So move.
I was going to say, one of y'all want to change that to a second? All right. Motion from Mr. Payson, second from Coach Berkman. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Congratulations, Mrs. Fletcher.
I just, if you don't mind, Mr. Boshiers, want a special word of congratulations to Ms. Fletcher. She and I were talking today when we were visiting a little bit about this recommendation, and I reminded her that way back when I came to the district 7 years ago, she was an instructional technologist and a teacher before that, I know by way of legend, and obviously that whole family means a lot to us and to the district, but went from technologist to instructional coach to assistant principal in 2 different buildings, and has earned the right to serve as the principal at Colt Elementary School. And we're just very, very excited for what you've done in the district and the growth that you've shown in your career. And just really excited for you. And very rarely do we get to have as much fun as we got to have this morning talking about all this. So that's good. Congratulations.
Yeah, again, congratulations and some big shoes to fill there, but I can't think of anybody better for it.
Erica's not going anywhere.
All right, so we will move on then back to the order of the agenda. Item 8, public hearing on taper presentation. Dr. Fields. This is listed as a public hearing, so also we'll go ahead and open public hearing at 6:56 p.m.
Good evening. Okay, this presentation will serve as the required public hearing for the Texas Academic Performance Report. The purpose of the hearing is to discuss the 2021 Texas Academic Performance Report. There are 7 sections in the report. It is the same report that comes out yearly. There will be some differences that you will notice, but same 7 sections that are always there. I have examples from each section. The information comes from PEAMS and also comes from our student assessment data. And it pulls together just different sources of information into one report about the district. The cover page of the report shows our accountability rating, our special education determination status, and any distinction designations would normally be there, but those were not awarded in 2021. That is what our cover page looks like. In section 1, you're also going to find STAR performance data. This will go back to looking a little more normal in the report where there's a comparison for 2 school years. Normally those would be consecutive school years, but because we did not have STAR in 2020, we're comparing 2021 to 2019. And academic growth will come back next year. We anticipate that we will be showing growth on the 2022 academic data. This is an example of what those pages look like in the report. You'll see different subpopulations and different tests compared, and you'll see us compared to the state and also to our region. Section 1 also contains information about our bilingual or ESL programs. STAR participation, which is a new addition to the report and was simply there because in 2021, many districts did not have high participation because of students that were virtual. The bilingual reports look like this. And my clicker stopped. And STAR participation looks like this. Oh. There we go. You'll also find information, section 1 is the majority of the report. You'll also find information about graduation, attendance, and graduation profiles. This is our attendance rate, dropout rate. And then the graduation profile looks like this. You're gonna see the ethnicity, the graduation types, and different programs that students that graduate from Marble Falls are in. This is also the location for college career military readiness information. And the most recent data for this actually comes from the 2020 school year, or the 2019-20 school year. Those data points are always a year behind because they take a little bit of time for PEIMS to be collected. And so we are looking at 2020 data there. You'll notice that our 2020 data compared to our 2019 data is significantly lower, and I want to explain why that is the case. In 2020, students didn't come back to school after spring break, so the opportunity to meet those college career military indicators were not there, and they didn't have the chance to take those certification tests at the end of the year, or SAT or TSI. So that is why there's a decrease in points there. You also will find information just about our students. What do our student population look like? Staff information, years of experience, that kind of information, and then program information. Okay, finally moving on to section 2. Section 2 contains your actual financial district data and then campus data. There's a report for each campus included. This is also 2020 data, not 2021. That takes a year to get collected. Then section 3 is district accreditation. Normally this would be where that information was announced, but no districts were assigned this status in 2021. Section 4 is your campus improvement plans. So taking all that information in the report, how do the campuses respond to that? What is their plan to respond to that? And the campus improvement plans are on the website, and that link would go to those. And then section 5 is a report on violent or criminal incidents. And TEA has designated certain incidents that would make a school would be considered violent or criminal. I'm happy to report, I know this is teeny tiny, but we had 0 of those incidents in last school year. And then section 6 is our student performance in post-secondary. This most current information is from our 2019 graduates. It takes a significant amount of time for this information to be gathered. This is what that report would look like, and it tells where our students are following graduation and then what kind of GPAs they have. This information can be a little misleading because it doesn't report students that might be in private schools or have gone to other states because Texas isn't able to collect that information. And then the last section is the glossary. So if you had a question about a certain term that you would find in the report, there's a glossary with that information at the end. Where could you find the entire report if you wanted to read it? This says it will be posted on the district website within 2 weeks. It's already there. The report's ready to go. Paper copies will be distributed following this meeting. And of course, you could always contact me and I can help you find the information you might want to find about that. Any questions?
I do. I have a favor to ask. I love a spreadsheet as much as the next guy, but a page full of numbers is really hard to read. Is there any way you could highlight the column, like red if it's gone down, yellow if it stayed the same, green if we've improved?
In this particular report, no, it's not an editable, it's a PDF
Okay, so
version.
you can't do it. Okay.
No, we probably could get that, pull it out and highlight it.
I can do that on my own, but I was just saying, if that's ever possible, it's so much easier to know what to
Definitely,
look
yes,
at.
I agree. It is definitely easier, and it would be nice if they would make it look like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? This is a public hearing, so do we have any questions comments from the audience? All right, not seeing any. Do we need any action on this? Okay.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and thank you, Dr. Fields. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:04. Move on to item 9, information items, general fund summary and expenditure report. Anybody on the board have any questions or want to discuss either of those items? Okay. So we'll move on to presentation, discussion items and possible action. A, class size waiver, Colt Elementary, Mrs. Lefflet.
Do you remember last month when I said I wouldn't have to come to you again because the deadline was that week? I should never have said anything, or I should have knocked on wood. 2 days after I talked to you all, we had a kindergartner enroll at Colt Elementary, which brought our class to 23. We are requesting approval to move forward with a class size waiver request from the Texas Education Agency for our classroom. Due to time constraints on the waiver, we're asking that you approve the waiver on first read so that we can submit the waiver through the Texas Education Agency website. We recommend that you allow MFISD administration to request a maximum classroom size waiver for 1 kindergarten classroom at Colt Elementary. The time now has passed to do any more waivers, so there will not be any more class size waivers that will come.
Okay. And this is just where we had an extra student enroll and,
Yes, sir.
okay. Okay. Any questions, comments from the board, motions?
I recommend that you allow the MFISD administration to request maximum classroom size waiver for 1 kindergarten classroom at Colt Elementary.
Second that.
Motion by Coach Barkman, second by Mr. Payson. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item B, School Health Advisory Council, PE, Health, Human Sexuality, Instructional Materials Update. Mrs. Lefflet.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Tonight, Ms. Metzger and I will present an overview of the timeline and progress of the School Health Advisory Council, SHAC, as well as the district and campus staff work in regards to the review and recommendation of the new PE, Health, and Human Sexuality instructional materials in grades K-8. Districts are required to teach the PE and Health TEKS to students in grades K-8, with the exception that parents must opt in to the Human Sexuality instruction portion. Mrs. Metzger will talk more on this later. Administration, with the assistance of SHAC, plan to bring forward a recommendation for the instructional materials to the April Board of Trustees meeting. The Marble Falls ISD SHAC meetings are monthly. Membership is a majority of parents not employed by the school district. We have members who represent local churches, community groups such as the Highland Lakes Crisis Center, the Hill Country Children's Advocacy Center, the Pregnancy Center, as well as representation from the medical community, law enforcement, and more. The membership of SHAC are all advocates for all students. This slide here is just the actual code that talks about membership. So what is the School Health Advisory Council? Just to review, SHACs assist the districts in ensuring the local community values are reflected in health education instruction. Additionally, SHACs play an important role in strengthening the connection between health and learning and they can help parents and community stakeholders reinforce the knowledge and skills children need to stay healthy for a lifetime. Why do we need one? Well, it's law. Healthy children do learn better. So as we discuss and we look through things, we see where we can improve. Schools play an important role in teaching healthy habits. Healthy homes and healthy schools support healthy children. What does the SHAC do? And so I just read pretty much this exact statement. The purpose of SHAC is to assist the district in ensuring local community values are reflected in the district's coordinated school health-related policies, procedures, strategies, and curriculum. There's a lot of law behind that. Everything from the SHAC listens to recommendations and makes recommendations in regards to opioid addiction education programs, to suicide awareness, to nutrition and health, to physical activity, to even staff wellness. And then SHACs play an important role in helping to communicate the connection between health and learning to our community. SHAC, this is a more extensive example straight from the law of the different areas that SHAC governs in regards to making recommendations to the school board. So topics such as health education, health and safe school environment, counseling and mental health services, parent community involvement, staff wellness promotion, health services, physical education, and nutrition services. Last year we studied a lot about school nutrition when we met as a SHAC throughout the year. We're required to have a subcommittee on physical education and to talk about physical education each year, and we'll get to that more as we hit our April and May meetings, because the discussion of these new materials was our first priority coming into this year.
Okay, so why are we here? We have new health teaks, and so that is why we are here, and that is why that has been the priority with SHAC this year, because next year there are new health teaks being implemented. There was a state committee that had work groups. They met several times, and they had several revisions of those, and then the final version was adopted, and it will go into effect next school year. How do we adopt instructional materials in MFISD? Well, Dr. Fields helps with that a lot, but our department, the Curriculum Instruction Department, forms a committee of teachers. They review the materials and decide which materials that we want to adopt at the district level, and this would be just any type of instructional materials, not necessarily just what we're doing right now with human sexuality and health. And during the time that we are adopting those materials, we provide the links to digital samples if there are links to digital samples. Some of the things we've been reviewing right now is just they're only workbooks. They're not digital. And so we provide what we can on our website. And then we have also provided an opportunity for people to come and look at those and make appointments with our office to review what we have digitally and what we have in print as well the last couple of weeks. And then the board approves the materials and certifies that they are TEKS compliant. So there are some new legal processes for the review of instructional resources regarding human sexuality education. We have our local policy, and you'll recall earlier this fall, we did adopt a resolution for SHAC for us to begin reviewing curriculum materials and to hold 2 public meetings. SHAC will review these. The teachers have also there's been a special teacher committee that has been reviewing them with an administrator as well in depth, and they will present and give their recommendations at our next SHAC meeting and be able to talk to the full committee about that. And then we will come back in April to present that to the board for a public meeting and a vote. In legal policy, you know, it has changed this year from an opt-out policy to an opt-in. And so basically we already did this year with our 8th graders. We've already taught that curriculum, and we sent out a Google form to all parents, and they had to opt in for their children to be able to be in that class for those 2 weeks to get that curriculum and those lessons. And there were some children that their parents did not opt in, And so we had an alternate assignment for them for those 2 weeks. And then after we decide on our new curriculum this year, we will post it, the information about it on the website, and parents are able to purchase a copy from the publisher if they wish to do so.
Ms. Metzger,
Yes, sir.
do you mind if I ask you a question?
You can go right ahead.
In your years of education, and feel free to look over your shoulder for a nod from Yarda one way or the other. When's the last time you heard of the state providing an opt-in option on anything in the required curriculum?
This is my 26th or 27th year in education, and I've never heard that. Have you?
Jeff? No, me either. So this is a dramatic shift from the state on the law that shouldn't be underestimated.
Absolutely.
Okay.
One other question, do you know what the percentages were that ended up opting in?
I can't tell you exact numbers, but what I can tell you is that we have approximately 250 eighth graders, and over 200 opted in. There were less than 50 that no one filled anything out, and so they opted out, or they purposely opted out.
I know that there's been availability for anybody who wanted to come look at the instructional materials to come do so. How many people have actually physically showed up to look at those materials?
We've had approximately 4 to 5 people.
How many people are currently serving on the shack?
42. There's about 7 teachers,
Okay.
but about 42 people.
Thank you.
Mhm.
In order to meet our goal dates as well as accomplish other tasks for the year, we've met monthly as a shack, as well as extended several meetings to 2 hours in length. As Ms. Metzger stated, at the same time, administration and teachers have been working on reviewing materials and researching additional areas to get accomplished this year after our meeting in April. At this time, I'm going to provide you with an overview of our meetings so far this year. Each one of these agendas may look small, but they actually are quite robust in what was covered. To start, meeting agendas are posted to the SHAC website 72 hours in advance of the meetings. We not only post the agenda on the district website, but we also post a paper version at all of the school offices, just like board postings. In addition, we post the audio recording as required by law within 10 days of the meeting. We also post the minutes and all presentations and materials to the SHAC website. Visitors are always welcome, and we have a public comment form for visitors to complete if they wish to address SHAC at the start of the meetings. This is very similar to the public comment portion of the Board of Trustees meetings. This year, our first meeting was in October. We had to take a couple months to try to build our membership. Our membership was quite low. At the first meeting, we reviewed the legal requirements of SHAC because there are many. We talked about recruiting a more diverse membership and participated in an overview of coordinated school health. We also made sure that everybody who agreed to be a member understood that the meetings would be recorded and that they were comfortable with the new legal requirements. At the November meeting, we reviewed bylaws, prioritized areas, and studied legal focus areas to be worked on throughout the year. We also reviewed the process for the review of the health and wellness curriculum to include sex education. We gave an overview of the required curriculum, clarifying that when a student expectation has the word including, that means we must teach it. When it has the word such as, that's giving examples. We began our study of the health TEKS for grades K through 8. The new health TEKS to be implemented in 22-23 include 5 strands in grades K through 5, which were physical health and hygiene, mental health and wellness, healthy eating and physical activity, injury and violence prevention, and alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. In grade 4, the 6th strand, reproductive and sexual health, is implemented. It was also important to note that some topics, like healthy relationships, is located in both the required TEKS and in the opt-in TEKS. The difference is the level of specificity in the opt-in TEKS. It's a more global statement, a global understanding of healthy relationships that all students get, and then when parents opt in to the reproductive and sexual health TEKS, there's a more in-depth discussion of healthy relationships. We left the meeting with each member having quite a bit of homework to study the new TEKS, as it was very important for everyone to have an understanding of what is required by the state before we start to really look at materials. In December, we adopted new bylaws, and then we continued our study of the new TEKS, allowing for a question session for members to ask Ms. Metzger and I questions about the required curriculum. We then went through and we presented our current materials. Keep in mind, current materials taught under the current curriculum. So many, they did not include many of the new TEKS, but we wanted to make sure that SHAC had an understanding of what was currently taught, what was currently required to be taught before we started to review new materials. In February, Ms. Metzger provided an overview of the secondary materials the teachers were reviewing. She'll show you a sample of what she presented on each publisher in just a moment, and you can see the full presentation of all the materials on the SHAC website. I provided a brief overview of the elementary materials. We reminded SHAC that materials are available to be reviewed, not just by members of SHAC, but by anyone. And if they wish to do so, they can just call and make an appointment. The reason why we say call and make an appointment is we want to make sure all the logins are available. Some of our logins, the publishers keep expiring. And so Ms. Metzger or Dr. Fields has to call back the publisher to get them to give us another login. And so we want to make sure that all the logins are working and we have all the print materials laid out for anybody that comes to view those.
Before we move off this topic, how many meetings are we required to have by law?
4.
How many have you got scheduled so far?
1 every month except
February.
December and January.
January, that's right.
So a clear exceeding of the state's minimal expectation for discussion, review, and input on the topic.
Okay, so I will share a little bit with you about what we did at our last meeting in February with just a broad overview of the 5 curriculums that we studied. So there were 7 teachers and administrators on the middle school group, and they each took 2 curriculums to study. Then they completed a Google form with information on those. And then from that, I created charts on each of the different publishers just to give a broad overview with these types of things. Spanish supports, grade levels. Is it a supplement? Does it cover them all? Does it come in print, digital? Just all these different, just kind of broad overview type things. And this was just one of the 5 publishers that we looked at. And then also I provided a table of contents slide that showed just the names of the different chapters or lessons that were within health and human sexuality within that particular publisher. And you're back to Ms. Lefflett.
So one thing to remember about elementary is the elementary PE teachers not only cover K through 5 elementary PE TEKS, health TEKS, and then we also work with the nurses on human sexuality TEKS, as well as the elementary PE teachers are the main staff members who implement our coordinated school health program in grades K through 5. At the elementary level, there are not as many choices to look through as far as health adopted materials. The main health adopted material that they are reviewing right now would be Quaver Ed, and it's for K5. And then up on this slide for right now, we have listed, so CATCH is our current coordinated approach to school health program. We made sure to have it listed there because as they were looking at there are some other resources that came out. For instance, there's one called Spark, but it turns out that Spark is more a coordinated school health program, not a program that covers all of the elementary TEKS as we are looking at with Quaver Ed. So these are the main ones that the elementary PE teachers, elementary nurses, and counselors have looked through. Dr. Fields has created an instructional materials page that she updates with every adoption that we have. Every adoption that we have, we are required to allow access for parents to be able to see the different instructional materials that are being reviewed. And so this is the website that parents can go to and they can view this current adoption, which is PE and health, to include the human sexuality TEKS. One question that I keep getting is, what do we do now in elementary school? And so one of the changes with the new TEKS is that the human sexuality TEKS go down to 4th grade. And so I've been asked, what do we currently do? What we currently do is we have puberty talks in the 5th grade. We will do the same this year that we have done in past years. We've always done an opt-in on our puberty talks. Here we've gone above and beyond on that. All campuses use the same letter. Boys and girls are separate. Numerous staff members are on hand. Within that, it is very structured at every campus because there is a way that students can submit questions. There's a way the person facilitating the discussion is able to weed through the questions. There are numerous adults in there in case if a student was to say something that catches somebody's attention that could indicate possible abuse. And so these are very well planned out by the staff, the nurse, the counselor, the assistant principal, the PE teacher, the PE aide, several other teachers that are very well respected at each campus are involved. We use the Always Changing and Growing Up curriculum video for with it. Due to COVID, the materials are not available to be shipped to us. So this year we can access the PDF files, and because we want to stay consistent with what we've done in past years, we will be printing those ourselves. In addition, normally the students receive a little bag of deodorant, and the girls get a little bag that has deodorant and a pad in it. So we're going to collect those items ourselves, and HOSA at the high school, the health science students, are going to help us to collect and put those things together so that we can make sure that every kid gets the same that they've gotten in past years. Future SHAC meetings. So this week on Wednesday is the next SHAC meeting. At this meeting, we expect the Secondary Teacher Review Committee will make a recommendation to SHAC, and SHAC will review what they are recommending for adoption. The Elementary Teacher Review Committee should also be making a recommendation to SHAC. April 13th, we have a meeting, an additional SHAC meeting, in which if we end up needing to finalize recommendations more, or we run out of time this week, then we come back April 13th, which is before the April board meeting, so that we can wrap it up before we come back to you at the April board meeting for a recommendation. If we finish our recommendations this week, yay, because April 13th, we're going to move on to some other legal requirements that we're going to try to get done by the end of the school year. And then May 4th is our last SHAC meeting. It's the final meeting of our school year, and we're going to try to get through a couple additional legal requirements before then. That's all that we have for just an update for you for this evening. Hopefully then that speeds up a little bit of the process for when we come back to make the recommendations. You have more of the background. I do plan to post this presentation, even though it is on board book, post this presentation to the SHAC website also for ease of people to be able to get to if they would like.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the board? I would just say thank you, and I really appreciate the depth of the presentation and the thoroughness of the work that the committee's doing. And, as a parent, I'd really appreciate the diverse representation on that as well. It sounds like we're doing everything we can to stay compliant with the state law while also, listening to what our community and our parents want also. So thank you all for that.
We would like to thank, we have a lot of parents that stepped up to serve on SHAC this year, and we are very appreciative for that, because the only way we could get the work done is if we had all those parents volunteer.
Definitely. Okay, so we'll move on to item 10C, high school, middle school, and administration building security cameras. Dr. Gassowit. Oh, Mr. Fink.
Good evening. So I believe it was 6 or 7 years ago when we leaned pretty heavily into replacing all the cameras at the high school. What was there was aging out pretty bad, and there weren't very many there. Excuse me. And we covered the high school pretty well with those cameras, and then maybe a year or so later we sprinkled some around the middle school, mostly for like areas of concerns and entry and exit points like we did at the elementaries. Due to all the new construction at the high school, we're pretty short in regards to visibility into a lot of new areas. So this will, I believe it was 43 at the high school. We'll cover all those new areas, as well as a few other locations that were identified as some blind spots. I worked with campus administration, gave them maps of proposed areas. They came back with more feedback, And so we adjusted and went off based off of that. The middle school, we are flushing it out like we did the high school originally. This will cover not only the areas of concern that are shown now, but it will be more like the high school in regards to all the entry exit points, outside and inside. And then, of course, we are looking at cameras at the admin area. We've never had them up there before other than the two in here, which are different cameras, and then over at Falls as well. We did look at another vendor. However, that vendor came back with roughly double the cost. I believe it was like $289,000. So these cameras are what we're buying now, just newer models, just because they release newer models as time goes on. It works with our current head-in system. Other than we may split off a new server, just because we're adding so many cameras, but we have more than enough server infrastructure to handle that. Yes. Yes. This will cover all the cameras for us, the district. We may have one or two that pop up, in the future, but that will be something I'll be able to take care of from local budget versus bond funds.
So just for the purposes people listening at home, I wanted to repeat some of what Dr. Gasway just mentioned. I'm glad you highlighted this. We were able to do significant camera work at the elementaries because of a grant that we were able to receive.
Yes, sir.
Which has helped us then do more of the work that we want to do out of the bond. These are bond program funds, yes?
Correct. Yes, sir.
The other thing I want you to mention is, so you've got the central office map here,
Yes, sir.
but we're also in the process of putting some cameras up in and around the transportation facility
Correct.
to add security around that building as well. So you don't see that represented on this map, and we treat central office different than the transportation facility, but I just want you to be aware as board members that we have cameras up going in around that space as well, so we can monitor those fuel islands and do a better job of maintaining what's going on in and around the bus yard.
Yes, sir. I wasn't sure how detailed you wanted me to
It's
get.
great.
Normally this isn't done. Yeah. So like you said, we'll be putting cameras at the transportation building. One of those cameras will cover the main gate down here where the buses leave. The other one will be the fuel island. And then of course all the areas up here as well. As a separate, I'm looking at a new head-in system, which is what we use to view those cameras, record the footage. Then the new system will have it's called AI analytics, and it's kind of just like it sounds, where you can tell it, show me everyone with, wearing a black shirt, brown pants, show me all the males, all the females in this location, and it'll pull up that footage, and you can track people throughout the buildings and stuff. And this is just the first read. Obviously, we'll come back in April. We just wanted to make the board aware of what we're looking at, and how much it was going to cost.
Grand total is $154,300 to TFE to do this work.
Yes, sir. And TFE is who we used in the past. They've actually done all of our camera work. We have looked at other sources, but they do a really good job on the cameras, and we're really happy with what they've done so far.
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your work on this and Dr. Gasway's leadership. It was the first year Jeff was here that we started talking to the board about a phase-in plan to get cameras in place at all of our facilities.
Yes, sir.
And if we get this done, we will have finally landed that plane. So it's nice to be at build-out on this.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Please. Yeah. We will have come in hitting the target under budget to refresh some additional cameras if we have some break fix issues. And if not, then be able to use for other projects. Yeah, that's great. It's great management of the money, great resource, or great use of grant funds to help us be smart with the money. So I appreciate y'all's work on this tremendously.
Sir. Any questions?
Any questions, comments from the board?
And just to remind us, all the data from this is stored internally?
Locally.
Secure locally, right?
Yes, sir.
But it's not.
It is inaccessible outside the district. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10D, DEA local resolution, Dr. Gasaway. Just making sure.
Yes. This is actually second read, and I normally it goes in consent, but you'll understand the logic to my madness here in a minute, because one of the questions that was asked last time, this is the policy that I requested y'all consider making a change that would allow us to pay a premium pay for non-exempt employees who are required to work during any sort of an emergency situation, such as bad eye stay. The board asked, is that going to be possible to do it retroactively to the event from February, where we did require some of our staff to come in and work? And so when I present the next item, which is going to be a resolution related to inclement weather and COVID, the answer to that question is yes, and it's going to be presented at in the next item on the agenda. But for today, for purposes of this, I want this to be done first, second read. If y'all are willing and ready to approve it, that we would make this permanent into DEA local, that what it would do is it would allow us to compensate any employee who is non-exempt that are required to work as declared by federal, state, local officials or the board shall be paid at the rate 1.5 times their regular rate of pay for all the hours worked up to 40-hour week. And so I would entertain any questions that you may have.
Questions from the board?
I'd love to make a motion to approve Board Policy DEA Local as presented.
Motion by Mr. Payson, second by Mrs. McCrary. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll keep you up here for item E, inclement weather and COVID-19 resolution.
Yes, sir. So in front of you is a resolution that is for your consideration. It is actually covering a number of things that we want the board to consider within this resolution. The first is that we did on January 14th, 2022, we had a high number of COVID cases that were impacting staff, students, substitutes, and we took that Friday off. And if you'll remember, it was very strategic that taking that Friday off, it gave us an extra day on Monday with Martin Luther King Day. But we had a number of staff that were at home, and so this resolution would cover getting those people home compensated. The second is that we had a recent weather event on February 3rd and 4th that made travel potentially dangerous in areas of our district, and so we had majority of our staff and all of our students at home those days. We did have, though, some employees that were required to come to work. And so this resolution also allows the board to pay the premium pay for any employee who was required to work during that time period. And so, as I mentioned, in front of you is the resolution, and that if you should pass it, that it would be allowing us to compensate the employees for the days that were missed, and also compensate our employees required to work on the bad weather days at a premium pay. I would entertain any questions that you may have.
Questions from the board, comments? I would just say I think that's a good deal for our staff, and if the board sees fit to pass it, I hope they understand how appreciated they are.
Absolutely. We will make that clear.
Were you hoping for action on this tonight, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
If it is ready where if we took action, but in all honesty, it's something that can wait, and we are not in a hurry.
Anybody wants to make a motion?
I would love to make another motion to adopt that beautiful resolution as written in the attachment.
All right, motion by Mr. Payson,
Second.
second by Coach Berkman. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right, item F, elementary attendance zones. Dr. Allen.
Yeah, we're just messing with you tonight. Jeff's actually going to take point on this, and I'm going to chime in as needed.
Okay, so here we go. We want to talk to you a little bit about just the potential. This is a beginning discussion about potentially looking at our elementary boundaries and having a discussion about rezoning those boundaries. And so what I wanted to do is just walk the board through a little bit of history about our elementary attendance zone boundaries. It's been over a decade since those have been formally reviewed, and during the past 20 years, elementary zones were only adjusted twice by the board. And so I thought y'all would want a little bit of a reminder about when those were. So in 2004, the board made the following adjustments. They set attendance zone for Spicewood. So at that time, we were looking at opening Spicewood. Let's set the attendance zone for that. Moving from K2 primary and 3 through 5 intermediate Colt and to Colt and Marble Falls Elementary. So we all of a sudden moved from this building where it was holding a certain group of kids to it was Colt Elementary, Marble Falls Elementary, K through 5. And the attendance zones were established for Colt and Marble Falls Elementary. Here's what that map looked like back then. And so moving forward, some areas these were areas that were adjusted in the red and blue as far as discussion points of Spicewood, what will go, and just different areas. In 2009, we adjusted with the opening of Colt at the current campus. The board made one additional small adjustment, and that was that we couldn't find really a visual record, but the areas are reviewed in that, and so I don't have good maps to show you. I could just find in board minutes that there were a few adjustments made, very minor adjustments. The areas reviewed were Colt, Marble Falls, Highland Lakes, and so here's what the map looks like today. And so that is our map. That has not been touched. In fact, if you were to ask Gina Solozano, Gina, how do we get a new map made? She would say, well, I've got to call a lot of people because we haven't touched our map since 2009. It looked the same as it did for the last few years. And so, and this is the area of Colt and Marble Falls Elementary. That was that slight adjustment up there in the high part. So, and you can see that is a couple of areas where there's a little bit of Colt that got added, or Marble Falls Elementary that goes all the way to the top that wasn't originally. Small area on the other side of 281 that got included in Marble Falls Elementary. And if you're wondering where that exactly is, think about the Vista Apartments as you're driving into Marble Falls High School, and that's kind of that area. And there's a small area on the other side of 281. And so the rationale behind a school boundary committee starting this discussion is just to review our current elementary boundaries in a manner to address future growth and facility planning recommendations, just where we at least start the discussion and just think about it as far as what do we have, what growth are we seeing. Consider developing recommendations for potential future elementary boundaries, balancing growth and enrollment at campuses. So looking at our current campuses, being able to, one of the great things that Gina does have, and I'm going to jump backwards for a minute, she has the ability to look at, I'm going to go to that map, and just she can, through a computer application she has the ability to look at where the boundaries are and adjust those in manners just to see if I move it from this street to this street, how many kids does that affect? If I moved MFE in that small little patch that's on the opposite side of 281, if I move that patch to Colt, and then I took that patch that's on the west side of 281 and said, let's have that go to Marble Falls Elementary, what would that do? She's got a computer program that will really help us look at that. And so the last thing is just one of the things that what we would do is we would be providing clear and consistent communication from the process to implementation. We would be talking about it, updating the board, making sure that the board and the community is aware of anything that we're doing. And so the planning committee, one of the things that was acknowledged in our planning committee before the bond was that as part of that long-range planning, the committee recognized that intervening measures such as redefining attendance zones may be used to manage capacity in lieu of new building construction when new construction does not serve the long-term interests of the students of the district. And so as we're looking at campuses, their enrollment, before we start looking at automatically, do we build another building and having that discussion, just looking at that was identified in the long-range planning committee. And so the purpose of the process that we would convene a committee comprised of parents, staff, community members to review and provide recommendations and any possible modifications to elementary attendance zones. Our guiding principles would be to balance elementary enrollments across MFISD as best as possible, keep neighborhood subdivisions intact, leverage natural boundaries as much as possible, and then develop district policy on grandfathering options. And what that means is just anytime that most school districts look at making some sort of adjustments, they figure out, like, what do we do with kids who have been going K through 4 and they've got 5th grade at an elementary school, but we're about to send them to another school. And so having some grandfathering options. And so the organization structure of the committee, that it would be a community committee process, and that would be more than 20 participants, that we would have at least 3 representatives from the elementary zones. We would probably be looking at just different impacts, and if there's more representation from some than others just because of the potential impact in areas. District staff would include, but not be limited to, principals from all of our elementaries, director of transportation, director of maintenance, district curriculum and instruction staff, the superintendent, myself, Nathan Fink, just because we would probably be using lots of technology, and then community members recommended from leadership. And so we plan to dip our toe in the water on this process and start getting a committee together to begin this discussion. There is not a prescribed outcome. There are many acceptable outcomes. An acceptable outcome would be that the committee may say, we think that there's some simple things we could do right now, and let's do that. There's some things that the committee may say, we'd like more information, that we have to gather more data, that we may have a process that goes extremely fast, or it could be extremely slow. We don't have a desired outcome that we've got to hit a certain timeline. We're going to let that committee and the group drive our process. Anything to add, Dr. Allen?
Well, no, you've done a great job. When we say we don't have a prescribed timeline, there's a point at which if something's going to happen this spring, it's got to happen by the 1st of May.
Yeah.
Or it can't, because you can't communicate to parents and you can't make staffing adjustments. If it goes past that, then it'll carry over into the fall, and that's just a logistical issue. The other thing that I just want to note is that one might be wondering, why this, why now? I ask myself that question all the time when we're looking at all sort of things. It seems like this might be an unusual conversation we're having when, due to COVID, the enrollment's actually down. Y'all, if you believe anything anyone's telling us, and it's an if, that's part of the reason we're taking this process with as much sort of open-mindedness as we are. The houses are coming. I know they're building out at Gregg Ranch. I mean, that I know to be certain. They're selling the inventory faster than they can build them. And Thunder Rock's coming online. I talk to the city manager for the city of Marble Falls weekly, and there's a lot of work being done out there. They've seen projections that have as many as 15,000 homes in the next 10 years. I think that's obviously high, but it doesn't matter. It could be 2,000 or 3,000 homes in the next couple, 3, 4, 5 years, and that would have a significant impact on our district. And so it's worth taking a look at making the zone tweaks that we might need to make. The best time to move zones is before the children and families are affected, not afterwards. And so if you know the developments are coming and you know where they're coming, and there are things that you can do to be a little bit ahead of that, it's not a bad idea, especially when in the process of doing that, you balance the administrative burden across your campuses. And not to hit the nail too fine on the head, but you've got Spicewood sitting there with 200 children. And you've got Colt sitting there with over 500, and pre-COVID was at 660 children at one point. And that is far from balanced administrative load on buildings. It is far, far from it. And so those would probably be the 2 buildings most affected, although you've pointed out very well, it's a head scratcher that we've got kids the other side of 281 going to MFE when Colt, you can almost hit Colt with a rock. Mm-hmm. And we have some of those same things going on. We've got kids on this side of 281, that'd be the west side of 281, going to Colt, and they could just, like, there's some small tweaks that we probably ought to be talking about. And so there's a number of things that we ought to look at as we try and begin to examine the big picture and anticipate and be prepared for growth. One of the things that the board has challenged me with is keeping our district prepared educationally, structurally and financially for growth, for the next thing. And so we just want to start the conversation and see where it leads. There is not an intended outcome, but we feel like if we don't start talking about it now, we're losing a real good opportunity to have a conversation that may open things up for the district a little bit.
You were saying before May 1st, there's currently one board meeting scheduled between now and May 1st.
Currently, if the timeline got that fast, we would end up having to call some special calls. And we would have to be compelled by that committee to believe that it's, well, how do I want to say? Like, you can look at the map and you can go, well, just do this. And to me, it's kind of obvious. There's a lot of numbers, traffic study numbers and this, that, and the other that you want to evaluate. But you can just look at the map and go, well, do this and do that, and you're good. And if people are to feel pretty confident that that's what we ought to do, then we push away from the table. We don't have to make something complicated just for the sake of it. If we need to spend time on it, we will. If it's pretty apparent that we know what we need to do, then we'll do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions, comments from the board? So I guess y'all are going to work on getting a committee together and
PDQ.
see what that has to say.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right, that brings us to item 11, consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. Minutes from regular board meeting held on February 22nd, budget amendments, and order of cancellation for May 7th, 2022 election. Does any board member want to pull any of those from the agenda? Dr. Allen, do you have anything to add on any of those?
Again, congratulations to you and Mr. Edwards for running unopposed. That allows us to cancel the election.
Save a little bit of money there at least.
Yes, sir, $6,000.
Okay. I'd take a motion for the consent agenda then.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Payson. Second by Coach Berkman. Any other conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Item 12, District of Innovation presentation. Mrs. Lefflet.
Good evening. This evening I will be presenting to you the proposed amended Marble Falls ISD District of Innovation Plan. The current Marble Falls ISD District of Innovation Plan will expire at the end of the 22-23 school year. If approved this evening, the amended plan will also expire at the end of the 22-23 school year. It only amends our current plan. However, we've already started the renewal process for the 23-24 school year, just like I explained at the last meeting. The DOI committee and DEIC will be ready to recommend renewal in October of 22. Once renewed to begin the 23-24 school year, the plan will be good for 5 years, so it will expire at the end of the 27-28 school year. Pending if the legislature changes anything in regards to DOI. Yeah, to review the amendment development process began in the fall. This timeline outlines the steps we have taken as a committee to review proposed amendment language and adjustments we have made along the way. I talked about it in quite a bit of detail at the last meeting, so you just have a little chart for this meeting. If approved this evening, the next steps are we notify the Commissioner of Education of the board's approval of the plan, along with a list of our exemptions. That would be a letter drafted from Dr. Allen. We have a form to fill out. We send it to the Commissioner. TEA then responds back to us with either questions or our plan is good. We post a copy of our amended plan to the district's website, and then we give TEA the link to where our plan is. They actually have a District of Innovation plan on their website where you can click and see anybody's innovation plan for any school district in the state of Texas. To review, we have 6 proposed amendments to our plan. You have a copy of the proposed amended plan. This is different than what you received last month. Last month you only had a copy of the amendments. This is the revised plan that we would submit to the Texas Education Agency. A list of the plan amendments, the timeline of events to where we are this evening, and the detailed information over each amendment begins on page 15. So if you turn to page 15, that's where you'll find So our proposed amendments, again, we have 6 of them. The first one was certification of staff, which allows us to hire non-certified yet highly qualified professionals to teach, or a certified educator to teach in a related field for which they are not credentialed by the state of Texas. This would allow us in our area to be able to hire somebody who moves in from out of state but is fully certified in their other state. We could acquire them quicker than we can right now. Right now, we lose out to them to other districts that already have this in place. Just as a reminder, we'll always first to seek a certified and highly qualified teacher. All open teaching positions will be posted. Certified teachers will be considered first. However, we will recommend the candidate of the highest quality. That's just a review. We are not DOIing, exempting ourselves from notifying the parents. We still have that we will notify the parents in writing if they're being taught by a teacher that's hired under this exemption. Some school districts, they exempt this. We will still notify all of the parents. The next one is transfer students. This is where we can revoke a transfer student midway through the year. If we have truancy or behavior concerns right now, once we approve a transfer, we have to keep the student for the full year for out-of-district transfers. The Deputy Superintendent's Office oversees transfers and would oversee this process. The next one is removal of unruly visitors. So remember, this is extreme behavior. This would be to where instead of us, trying to really, as they're extremely irate, trying to get their formal name, issue out something formally to them in writing. We can't just remove them right then. This allows us to remove them from the campus right then. And we did have that revised wording that we showed you at the last meeting that clarified just some misconceptions that some of our community had, that we do mean extreme behavior in which students or staff do not feel safe. Suspension of students in grades below 3. And so this would be extreme behavioral circumstances, students that, if you'll remember the revised wording we had, we actually clarified. These would be students that Dr. Fancher, the Executive Director of Special Services, would research, and we would give approval before the out-of-school suspension could happen. We would verify, do they have already a disability? Are they in the child find process? What other steps have been taken? And in the time that they are suspended, we would develop a reentry plan for the student to be able to come back and be successful and have the adults have a plan that they would follow. The next is class size waiver for DAP. This allows us to have greater flexibility with the DAP. We can flex the classes, we're able to flex the teachers, we can put the teachers where more need is if we're having trouble getting some different people to come in and assist us. And the last is expulsion from DAP for persistent misconduct. The students who raise a ruckus at the home campus and continually disrupt the home campus that are then sent to the DAP and continue to disrupt the DAP where the DAP has a hard time to run, we will expel them. Keep in mind, Marble Falls does not expel to the streets. We expel back to the DAP. They just might not get to come during regular school hours and make a fool of themselves like they are, because they are in attendance every single day. And so we would work out a different way for them to be able to receive their instruction. For this, the Executive Director of Special Services and myself would be involved in the decision to expel. The reason why is we want to look at the student's complete history and check to see if there's something that we've missed. And how can we set up the best educational environment for them as they return. I say they might not come during the day. They might. Maybe it is better we have it during the day and they're one-on-one with somebody, or maybe it's better they come from 4 to 7, or we would research and look. So these are our 6 proposed amendments. These are our next steps that I already reviewed with you. And so I'm available to answer any questions. It is the administration's recommendation to approve the Marble Falls ISD District of Innovation amended plan that would expire at the end of the 22-23 school year.
Thank you, Ms. Lefflett. Any questions from the board, comments? I'd again just say thank you for the work that y'all put into that and for the whole process and everything. I think it was very well thought out and meticulous, and y'all did a good job with it, so thank you. I'd entertain any motions.
I'm not sure I'm going to do this right. I move that we accept the administration's recommendation and approve the Marble Falls District of Innovation amended plan effective until the end of the 2022-2023 school year.
Good job. Motion by Mrs. McCrary, second by Mr. Payson. Any other discussion, questions from the board? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 13, upcoming meetings and board training opportunities. We have a regular board meeting Tuesday, April 19th. Regular board meeting Monday, May 16th. Regular board meeting Monday, June 20th. And a board retreat on Thursday, June 23rd. Dr. Allen, do you have anything to add on those?
No, sir. I just wanted to have you highlight on your calendars, April 19th. That is a Tuesday after the Monday. So it's Easter Monday. We're out that Monday as a school district and we're back on Tuesday. So just make sure you've got that as a Tuesday and you've got that nailed down.
Okay. Thank you. We took care of everything from executive session earlier this evening. Did anybody want to need to go back into executive session for anything? Okay. Then having no almost made it without tongue slip. Having no further business to conduct, the board will stand adjourned at 7:59.
Mr. Verdell, can you hear me? You can just do hand signals here, but tell me, is Texas Tech going to beat Duke? I need to know because I'm working on a revised bracket. You got all your tech gear flying tonight.